Welcome back, everyone. Today, I was telling you how I don't believe the AI bubble is all that's cracked up to be, and that there is a real problem in America that's not quite as sexy, and so it doesn't get the headlines. Well, today, right now, that is what we're going to talk about. But first, I want to welcome you to Ruben Tech, where we discuss the intersection of tech, politics, and finance. Today, it's going to be mostly about finance. Of course, there's going to be some technology, but let's just jump right into it. So, first, before I get into the real problem, which I'm not going to hold you hostage, it is the national deficit. And I'm going to explain to you in detail why it is. You might say, oh, I've heard this 100 times, but maybe I will give you some new information because it's not a sexy thing. Okay. People like to hear the scary stuff. And this is truly, if you know the details, it's scarier than everything else. But it's boring because it's a slower process. It isn't like the stock market, which can crash overnight. Okay. But first, before I want to get to that, I just wanted to share with you something I brought up. And this is about Huawei. And the reason I brought this up is because I'm talking about AI and how it's not going away. How most people think AI is just a chatbot, and it's not. So I went into Gemini here and I asked it, I said, tell me how Huawei has used AI internally to improve their operations. And Gemini said, Huawei has used AI extensively across its internal operations, from manufacturing to supply chain management and customer service, to drive significant efficiency gains and cost reductions. You might say, well, why am I using a Chinese company? Well, one, it's an absolute behemoth, that's a powerhouse. And two, okay, I'm just showing you that people are like, there's an AI bubble. Well, if it's here, then it has to be in China too, because they are chasing AI also. And the simple fact is that this is why it's not a bubble. Okay, this kind of stuff, because companies are already implementing it and making money from it. Key areas where Huawei has implemented AI include manufacturing, quality inspection, automated production lines. Huawei has transformed its production lines for ICT infrastructure and mobile phones. The AI and digital solutions allow a flagship phone production line to operate with only 14 people, down from 80 to 90, while outputting a device every 28 seconds. Okay, AI-powered quality inspections, machine vision, self-developed machine vision solutions are used in over 80 production lines for tasks such as appearance inspection and optical character recognition. Anyways, it reduces defects per unit by up to 80% and makes order delivery 20% faster. Predictive maintenance, logistics optimization, increasing loading rates by 15%. Look at these numbers I'm talking about. If you come into a company as large as Huawei is a behemoth, right? I know I keep saying that, but you have to understand how big they are. They have, I believe they have well over 150,000 employees. Let me just ask real quick. How many employees? I believe it's well over 150,000. Does Huawei have? So I don't remember from the last thing. Yeah. 208,000 employees. Okay. Okay. You hear me? So this is a monstrous company, right? And so when I'm sitting here and I'm telling you that they're getting 20%, 80%, when they're getting 15%, these are huge efficiencies. When you're a company that size, if you make a 1% change in efficiency on some of these operations, you're saving millions. When you're doing this, you are saving boatloads of cash. They're saving stacks, literal mountains of money that AI is saving for them. AI intelligently calculates optimal transport routes and cargo storage plans to improve distribution efficiency and asset utilization. Automated customs declarations. AI has automated customs declaration forms, improving clearance efficiency tenfold. That's an entire order of magnitude. Use anomaly detection to find problems with 99% accuracy. Okay. Autonomous driving networks. This improves service deployment efficiency, reducing O&M costs, and has decreased the end-to-end processing time for complaint tickets from 14.6 to 5.2 hours. Intelligent energy management, reducing the power usage effectiveness by 8 to 15% and saving millions of kilowatt hours of electricity. AI-enabled algorithms also allow base stations to consume over 20% less power. Okay, they have 20,000 digital assistants. They have 7,000 AI models, for God's sake. Okay, they review millions of sales documents with 99.5% accuracy. These are from the Huawei site. You can go there. They have hundreds of documents on AI. Okay, so where is the bubble? It's not a bubble. I could ask Google right now the same thing for Google, and they would list it. Here's how Google is using AI to make all kinds of cash. So when you hear this on the TV, what are they talking about? They're talking about these stupid chatbots. Okay. Are they in a bubble? Yes, they are. OpenAI, Claude, Anthropic, they don't make any money. And do they have a path to make any money? No, they probably don't. Okay. But there are a lot of big companies using AI making tons and tons of money. Okay. That's all I want to tell you. And this distracts from the real boring problem. Why is this boring though? Why? Well, I don't know why anyone would think this is boring. The national deficit debt is 38.15 trillion dollars. A ginormous amount. It's equivalent to roughly, I believe, 1.3 times our entire national GDP. Okay. And the biggest problem about this is the interest that we pay on this debt. Okay. So if I come down here and well, first, before we get to that, look at this. You want to know why I believe China doesn't want to be the world's reserve currency? This is why. Look through history. There's lots of channels that have talked about this. There's lots of articles that have documented this. Everybody who has been to world's reserve currency ends up doing this, exploding into debt and ultimately failing. Okay. So that's why I don't think the Chinese government is all like, hey, we want the government, US to default right away. Because the simple problem is then who's the next best person for the default currency? Them. And they're smart. They're like, we don't want that to happen, right? So when people are like, China should lay the debt bomb on America, President Xi's like, no, he's a lot smarter than you are if you think that. Trust me. And he's like, no, absolutely not. We're going to build up a secondary system. We're going to let Americans in the West just implode on their own, right? Our system is going to be backed by gold. It's going to be backed by an actual asset. Okay. We're going to allow currencies to settle directly in other currencies. We're not going to have to use, you can use yuan if you want, RMB, but you can also use, rubles or whatever, they're going to set up their own separate system, but it's not like they're just going to dump dollars and crash the system. Okay. They know the danger of that. Plus, they know that's going to happen anyways, eventually on its own. And why is that? Well, because of this. This is actually the scariest chart. And this is the fact that on our debt, look at this. We're paying the highest amount of interest that we have in the past 10 years. Okay. 3.36%. You might say that doesn't sound bad. The number I just gave you was what? $38.15 trillion. So actually, let's do it like this. Let's do it in the big number so it has more impact. This is 38,000. That's 38 million. That's 38 billion. Okay, so that's our national debt, big number. Times it by 0. What was it? 0.3. Sorry, I forgot. 36. Okay. There's a number, 1.2. It won't even list it out here. I'll write it out for you. 1280. Oops. Thousand. Million. Billion. There's our interest payment. Okay. Americans, if you're watching, that is our interest payment. That is not a debt payment. That is the interest. If you have a credit card, that is the interest. It does not go towards the principal. Okay, that is the interest. Okay, and to give you an idea how bad this is, we'll take a look at this math over here. 2.23%, 9 years ago, the interest payment on this, 19.57, 19.57. Oops, and we're going to times it by 0.0. What was it? I already forgot. 2.23. 223. 9 years ago, this would be in billions. Trillions. So this would be nine years ago, it was $436 billion. So in 10 years, the interest has tripled that we pay every single year. Okay. Every single year. It is the largest line item in our budget. Look at this. Look at this. This is our national deficit. We are $1.78 in the hole this year alone. Okay. Look at the spending. Look at the spending. Okay. This is how much money they're spending. And 1.38 divided into 7.01. What is that? 1.3 or 1.3, sorry, divided into 7, we'll just say 0.01, so essentially 7. It's 20%. The government is like a poorly managed household. Okay. Like I hate comparing, you can't compare governments to household, but in this case, this is like a young person who has no idea what their credit card interest, how a credit card company makes money. They think it's free money. Okay. That is the percentage, 18.5% of our income, of our spend, not our income. It's more than that of our income. 18.5% of our spend is going towards interest. Okay. Let's see what percentage it is of income, right? I mean, that's going to be hilarious. This is not actually hilarious. This is actually very sad. Oh my God, this is going to be terrible. 1.3, divided by, I think it was 5.2, 25% of our income. Okay. So every month, imagine that 25% of your income went to interest, not the principal, just interest. Okay. Now listen, when I say this, I'm going to tell you something. This is not going to explode overnight. It's not how it happens. It's not as sexy as a stock market crash. This causes inflation. If you're wondering, if you're my age and you're wondering why have the last 10 years we've had so much inflation, this is why right here. Okay. This is why we have so much inflation, because we are paying out so much money on interest. We're paying so much money, spending money. Okay. And they can't pay that interest. To pay that interest, they have to issue more debt. And when they issue that debt, people around the world now, China, okay, has said, we are done buying. They're not buying anymore. And other people around the world are forcing the rates to go higher on the longer term debt because they don't know that America is going to be able to pay it back in 30 years. Okay. So every time they spend something, Basin has to go out and auction off more dollars. He has to keep doing that. And that's why President Trump, is so, there's only one solution to this. I guess I better back up here. I'm getting ahead of myself. There's only one solution to this, and that is hyperinflation. That's all the US can do. Okay. So in China, where they actually have deflation, okay, prices get cheaper in China. In America, we have inflation, and pretty soon we're going to have hyperinflation. Now, I don't think we're going to be like Argentina or something like that. But I think that, if you look at it, we obviously are higher than 3%. There are line items on things like beef that have gone up 50% year over year. But obviously, all of the only thing that's going to happen is that they have to inflate the economy. Okay, they have to make it super hot and make the number bigger for the economy so they can increase revenue. And their only hope is that this revenue, the debt to GDP number goes down. And with this more revenue come in, they can start paying on it, or at least it's not as bad. It's not as big of a percentage. Okay, but in order to do that, they got to inflate things. That's why Donald wants 1% interest rates. He wants to flood the system. He wants to kick out Powell, get his own guy in there, get 1%, bring back massive amounts of QE, and fire up this economy just crazy hot, okay? And just inflate this debt away. That's the only thing they can do. They know they cannot pay it. They're not morons. Okay, they were celebrating the fact that the debt last year was, I think it was like 50 billion, or maybe it was like 100 billion under what was projected. And they were celebrating that as some huge win. Hey, look, it's supposed to be, maybe the debt last year, I think was supposed to be like 1.75 trillion, or sorry, the deficit, 1.75 trillion. It ended up being like 1.7, or maybe it was 1.85, and it came in at 1.78. I remember the article. It was absolutely ridiculous. And they were celebrating that as a win. Okay. They weren't celebrating. They didn't pay down debt. They're just saying, hey, we beat the projection. Okay. And they did beat it. Fair enough to them. It's a silly thing to celebrate. It was the tariffs. The tax on Americans. But this is the problem. Okay. And when people look at this, understand China isn't going to accelerate this because they want time to set up their system. Two, they also have a lot of our debt still. So they don't want to devalue that. Right. And three, President Xi, at least understand, I've been doing research a little bit on the Chinese, how they deal with stuff. How they deal in international relationships. I'm not an expert, but from what I can see, okay, when President Xi says that he wants to have win-win relationships with other countries in trade, I believe him. Okay, so I don't think that he looks at America and says, this is a zero-sum game. We have to beat you. I believe that he says, we are concerned with China. We want the best thing for China. We will respect your country as long as you respect us. And what our goals and ambition are to further the betterment of the Chinese people. Okay. So understand, he's not looking like, oh, hey, I can go on right now and destroy America, because what benefit would that have to the Chinese people? Right. I mean, some people will be like, yeah, that's fun. But ultimately, it's not going to help China. Okay. It's not going to help. So that's what I think, so I wouldn't expect, people are like, they should do the debt bomb. They're not going to do anything like that. Okay. Right. They're just over there quietly building up the strength of their economy, building up the strength of their supply chains, building up the strength of their financial systems. Right. They're going ahead and they're keeping their house in order. And they're just making sure that they keep a safe distance from the craziness that's going on over here. Okay. And as an American, I can say this. If you are an American out there, I really think somehow it's time that America first becomes truly America first, right? America needs to look at the Chinese way of doing international relationships on trade and do the same thing. We need to stop spending so much money on war, so much money on interference. We need to start spending money at home on infrastructure, on roads, on energy, okay, on things, on airports, updating airports, on ports, okay, ship ports. We need to look at these things and actually start spending money on education, on building a better, life for the average citizen. We can't just keep taking all of our money and giving it to the rich and the wealthy. It's not going to bode well for us. Okay. And it's not going to bode well for them. It isn't, because the simple fact is that China is going to pass us. Right. And so all these people that they're all involved in this zero-sum game, they're going to get beat anyways. So why don't you actually look at this country and try to truly make it great again by saying, hey, let's stop meddling. We don't need to be invading and kicking Maduro out. What does he do that affects us? Okay. What does he honestly do? Do you think he's honestly that he is the head of a drug smuggling ring? I find that laughable. Okay, I really do. And you might say, you're naive, President Trump. Well, you're naive if you believe him. Okay, I've seen the pictures. A lot of those look like fishing boats that couldn't make it, across the lake down from my house, much less all the way to America. Okay, so this is getting nuts. And so what? We're sending warships down there. We're going to be sending, I think they said 10,000 troops. How much money does that cost? Right? What better use of that money could we possibly have? This is a real issue. We can't keep wasting money like this. Can we? I don't know. That's what I got for you. That's what I think the real problem is. I know it's not as neat as other things, but that's what I believe. All of you out there, take care.